Daniel Park had never been so scared in his entire life. He stood in a long line of soldiers, all wearing their best uniforms, all sweating under the hot afternoon sun. But Daniel was sweating more than anyone else. His hands were shaking. His heart was beating so fast he thought it might explode. Today was the day the aliens would arrive. Not just any aliens. The Cathari Empire was coming. They ruled over 200 star systems. Their Empress was the most powerful being in the known galaxy. And Daniel, a simple private first class from a small town in Ohio, was supposed to help guard her. He did not want this job. He had joined the military to pay for his mother's medical bills. She was sick, and the treatments cost more money than their family had ever seen. Daniel was not brave. He was not special. He was just a quiet young man who jumped at loud noises and apologized too much. "Stop shaking," whispered Lisa, his best friend, standing next to him. "You look like a scared puppy." "I am a scared puppy," Daniel whispered back. Before Lisa could respond, a shadow fell over the entire plaza. Daniel looked up and felt his stomach drop. The alien ship was enormous. It blocked out the sun like a metal moon descending from the heavens. The ship was black and silver, covered in strange symbols that glowed with purple light. The crowd of humans fell silent. Even the birds stopped singing. The ship landed without a sound. A ramp extended from its belly, and fog rolled out like something from a horror movie. Daniel wanted to run. He wanted to hide, but his feet were frozen to the ground. Then she appeared. Empress Vera of the Cathari stepped out of the fog like a goddess descending from the clouds. She was tall, almost 7 feet, with skin that shimmered like violet silk. Her eyes were pure silver, with no pupils, and they seemed to look at everything and nothing at the same time. She wore armor that looked like liquid metal, flowing around her body like water. Behind her walked dozens of warriors, each one bigger and scarier than the last. But Daniel could not look away from the Empress. She was terrifying. She was beautiful. She was everything humans were not. Vera surveyed the gathered humans with an expression of complete boredom. Her silver eyes moved slowly across the crowd, and wherever they looked, people shrank back in fear. "So these are humans," she said. Her voice was cold and smooth, like ice sliding over glass. "I expected something more impressive. They looked like clever insects who learned to build fires." Daniel heard a few soldiers nearby grumble in anger, but no one dared to speak. The Cathari warriors had weapons that could level cities. Ambassador Grace Kim stepped forward with a practiced smile. She was a small woman with gray hair and kind eyes, but Daniel knew she was tougher than anyone in the military. She had negotiated with aliens before. She knew how to play the game. "Welcome to Earth, Your Imperial Majesty," Grace said smoothly. "We are honored by your presence." "You should be," Vera replied without looking at her. "Let us proceed with this tedious formality. I have empires to manage." The ceremony began. Speeches were made. Documents were signed. Daniel stood at his post, trying to become invisible. He was part of the inner security ring, positioned just 30 feet from the Empress herself. He had no idea why Commander Webb had assigned him here. It felt like a cruel joke. Daniel watched the Empress throughout the ceremony. She looked bored. She looked annoyed. She looked at the humans around her like they were dust on her boots. Then everything went wrong. It happened so fast that Daniel barely understood what was happening. There was a flash of light from somewhere in the crowd. Someone screamed. The Cathari warriors drew their weapons. But Daniel was not looking at the warriors. He was looking at the Empress, and he saw the beam of energy flying straight toward her head. He did not think. His body moved before his brain could catch up. He threw himself across the space between them and tackled the Empress to the ground. The energy beam hit his shoulder instead, burning through his uniform and into his flesh. Daniel screamed in pain, but he did not let go. He covered the Empress with his own body, shielding her from any more attacks. The Cathari warriors killed the assassin in seconds. The crowd was in chaos. People were running and screaming, but underneath Daniel, the Empress was completely still. Finally, the warriors pulled Daniel off her. He collapsed on the ground, holding his burned shoulder, tears streaming down his face. The pain was worse than anything he had ever felt. Empress Vera stood up slowly. Her perfect armor had dust on it. Her silver hair was messy, and she was staring at Daniel with an expression he could not read. "You touched me," she said. Her voice was strange, not angry, but something else. "I'm sorry," Daniel gasped through the pain. "I'm so sorry, Your Majesty. I didn't mean to. I just saw the weapon and You shielded me with your body," Vera interrupted. "You took a blow meant for me. Why?" Daniel blinked through his tears. The question confused him. Because it's my job? I'm supposed to protect people. All people." Vera stared at him for a long moment. Then she turned to her warriors. "This human will be reassigned as my personal guard for the rest of my visit," she announced. Everyone gasped. Daniel felt his heart stop completely. "Your Majesty," one of her advisors began, "surely you cannot mean—" "Did I stutter?" Vera's voice cut through the air like a blade. "This human is now mine. See that his wound is treated." As the Cathari medics rushed to help him, Daniel caught the Empress looking at him one more time. There was something in those silver eyes. Something that had not been there before. Curiosity. And something more. Daniel closed his eyes and wondered what he had gotten himself into. The first week was torture for Daniel. Not because of his healing shoulder, which the Cathari medicine had fixed in hours. No. The torture was simply being near Empress Vera every single moment of every single day. She watched him constantly. Those silver eyes followed him like a predator stalking prey. When he stood guard outside her door, he could feel her gaze through the walls. When he walked behind her during meetings, he could feel her attention on the back of his neck. And she tested him. Again and again, she tested him. "Humans are such fragile creatures," Vera said one day during a diplomatic dinner. "I have seen insects with more impressive biology. Tell me, guard, does it not shame you to be so weak?" Daniel felt his face turn red. 20 important aliens and humans were watching him. His voice came out as barely a whisper. I suppose we work with what we have, Your Majesty." "Speak up," Vera commanded. "I cannot hear mice squeaking." "I said we work with what we have," Daniel repeated, only slightly louder. "We cannot choose how we are born, only what we do with our lives." Vera stared at him. Then she turned away without another word. This happened every day. She would insult humanity. She would mock his nervousness. She would make cruel comments about his shaking hands or his quiet voice. And every time, Daniel would respond with soft words and shy apologies. He never got angry. He never fought back. He simply accepted her cruelty and continued doing his job. It was driving Vera insane. She did not understand this human. Her entire life, she had been surrounded by warriors who fought for dominance, advisors who schemed for power, nobles who killed for status. Everyone wanted something. Everyone was dangerous. But this small, trembling human wanted nothing. He fought no one. He was dangerous to no one. And yet he had thrown himself in front of an energy weapon to save her life. Late one night, Vera could not sleep. She walked through the embassy's quiet halls, her bare feet silent on the cold floor. She was looking for something, though she did not know what. Then she heard crying. The sound came from a small supply closet. Vera approached silently and pressed her ear to the door. Through the thin metal, she heard Daniel's voice. "I know, Mom. I know it hurts." He was speaking to a small screen, his face wet with tears. "But the doctors say you're getting better. The new medicine is helping." "I miss you so much, Danny." An older woman's voice came through the speaker. She sounded weak, tired. "I worry about you up there with those aliens." "I'm fine, Mom. Please don't worry about me." Daniel wiped his eyes. "I'm sending you more money next week. You just focus on getting better, okay? That's all that matters. You're such a good boy. Your father would be so proud." Daniel started crying harder, but he kept his voice steady. "I love you, Mom. I'll call again soon. Get some rest." The call ended. Through the crack in the door, Vera watched Daniel sit alone in the darkness, his head in his hands, his shoulders shaking with silent sobs. She walked away without making a sound. Something strange was happening inside her chest. It felt tight. It felt wrong. She did not understand this feeling, and that frightened her more than any enemy ever had. The next day, Vera's behavior changed. She still watched Daniel constantly, but her insults became less sharp. Her questions became more curious than cruel. "Why do you read those?" she asked one evening, pointing at the worn paperback book Daniel had left on a table. Daniel blushed and grabbed the book quickly. "It's nothing, Your Majesty. Just a story. I'll put it away." "Give it to me." Daniel's hand shook as he handed over the book. It was a simple romance novel, the kind his mother used to read. The cover showed a man and woman embracing under a sunset. Vera looked at it with disgust. This is what humans consider literature? Tales of primitive emotional attachment? It's comforting, Daniel mumbled. The idea that love can fix things, that people can be happy. Vera made a sound of contempt and walked away with the book. Daniel assumed she would throw it in the garbage. He did not know that she stayed up all night reading it. He did not know that she demanded her servants find more human romance novels. He did not know that the Empress of 200 star systems was now secretly addicted to love stories about humans finding happiness. 1 week later, Vera found Daniel in the embassy's rooftop garden. He was sitting alone, watching the sunset, looking more peaceful than she had ever seen him. She sat down next to him without asking permission. Daniel nearly jumped out of his skin. "Your Majesty, I apologize. I should have been at my post." "Be quiet," Vera said softly. "I want to ask you something." Daniel fell silent, his heart pounding. "In those books you read," Vera began carefully, "the humans value kindness, gentleness, softness. My people see these things as weakness. Yet you showed me that you would die to protect someone you do not even like. How do you explain this?" Daniel thought for a long moment. The sunset painted his face in orange and gold. "I think kindness isn't weakness," he finally said. "I think it's the hardest thing there is. Anyone can be cruel. Cruelty is easy. But choosing to be kind when the universe gives you every reason to be cruel, that takes real strength." Vera said nothing. She sat beside him in silence as the sun disappeared below the horizon. For the first time in 300 years, she had no response. And for the first time, she did not want to leave. High Advisor Theron had served the Cathari Empire for 500 years. He had watched emperors rise and fall. He had survived wars, plagues, and revolutions. He had done this by being smarter than everyone else and by removing threats before they became dangerous. The human was becoming dangerous. Theron watched from the shadows as Empress Vera smiled at something Daniel said. Smiled. The Empress never smiled. She had conquered entire planets without changing her expression. And now this weak, pathetic human was making her smile. It was disgusting. It was unacceptable. It had to end. The next morning, Theron stood before the full diplomatic assembly. Humans and aliens sat in rows of seats, watching as he presented his evidence. "The human known as Daniel Park is a spy," Theron announced. His voice echoed through the great hall. I have found proof that he was planted in the security detail to gather information about our empire. Daniel, standing at his post near the wall, felt his blood turn to ice. This is absurd, Ambassador Grace Kim said firmly. Private Park has served Earth with distinction. What evidence do you have? Theron smiled coldly. Messages recovered from his personal device, payments from unknown sources, secret meetings in restricted areas. He waved his hand, and holographic images appeared in the air. The human cannot be trusted. Daniel stared at the images. They showed things he had never done. Messages he had never written. Money he had never received. That's not true, he said weakly, but his voice was too soft. No one heard him. Cathari warriors moved toward Daniel. He did not resist as they grabbed his arms. He never resisted anything. Take him to a holding cell, Theron ordered. He will face imperial justice. Wait. Vera's voice cut through the hall like a blade through silk. Everyone froze. The Empress stood slowly from her throne. Her silver eyes were fixed on Theron with an intensity that made even the old advisor take a step back. Show me this evidence again, Vera commanded. Theron hesitated. Your Majesty, the evidence is clear. I said, show me. The holograms appeared again. Vera studied them with terrifying focus. Her eyes moved over every detail, every line, every piece of data. This message, she said, pointing at one of the images, is dated from the 3rd week of our visit. It discusses security protocols for my personal chambers. Yes, Your Majesty, clear evidence of spying. Except, Vera continued, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper, on that date, the human was with me, in my private garden, for 4 hours, alone. The hall went completely silent. He could not have sent this message, Vera said, because he was reading me poetry about flowers while I pretended to find it boring. Theron's face went pale. Furthermore, Vera continued, these payment records use currency codes from the outer colonies. Our human friend has never traveled beyond Earth's moon. How would he receive payments from a system he has never visited? She turned to face Theron directly. Her silver eyes burned with cold fury. You fabricated this evidence, advisor. You lied to this assembly. You tried to destroy an innocent man to serve your own jealousy. Your Majesty, Theron stammered. I was only trying to protect you. Release him, Vera commanded the warriors. Now! The warriors let go of Daniel immediately. He stumbled, nearly falling, his body shaking with relief and confusion. Vera stepped down from her throne and walked across the hall. Every eye followed her. She stopped directly in front of Daniel. Are you injured? She asked softly. Daniel shook his head, unable to speak. Come with me. She turned and walked out of the hall. Daniel followed on trembling legs. In her private chambers, away from all watching eyes, Vera's cold mask finally cracked. Her hands were shaking as she examined Daniel's arms where the warriors had grabbed him. Purple bruises were already forming on his skin. They hurt you, she whispered. It's nothing, Daniel said. Your Majesty, I don't understand. Why did you defend me? You could have let them take me. It would have been easier. I'm nobody. Vera looked up at him. For the first time, he saw something vulnerable in those silver eyes, something afraid. I do not understand what is happening to me, she admitted. All my life I have valued strength, power, control, and then you appeared. You, with your shaking hands and soft voice and ridiculous kindness. You make no sense. You should not matter to me. But I do, Daniel asked quietly. Vera was silent for a long moment. I have ruled for 300 years, she finally said. I have never been confused. I have never been uncertain. And I have never ever felt what I feel when I look at you. Daniel's heart was pounding so hard he thought she must be able to hear it. I'm scared, he whispered. I'm always scared. But when I'm with you, the fear doesn't matter as much. You make me want to be braver." Vera reached up and touched his face. Her fingers were cool against his warm skin. "Then we are both changing," she said, "and I do not know where this path leads." "We don't have to know," Daniel replied. "Some things just are." They stood there in the fading light, two impossible people from two impossible worlds, finally admitting what they could no longer deny. Outside the door, High Advisor Theron watched through a crack in the wall, his face twisted with hatred. If he could not destroy the human through politics, he would have to try something more direct. War was coming. The video spread across the galaxy like fire through dry grass. Every news network, every communication channel, every planet with a screen showed the same images. Empress Vera of the Cathari Empire, the most powerful ruler in the galaxy, holding hands with a human, laughing with a human, looking at a human with eyes full of love. Within hours, the galaxy was in chaos. "This is an insult to our entire species," shouted the leader of the Vortan Confederation. "The Empress has lost her mind." 3 star systems are threatening to leave the Empire, reported Vera's generals. "The outer colonies are in revolt. Your Majesty, you must denounce the human publicly." Vera sat on her throne, her face like stone. But inside, she was breaking. "I will not denounce him," she said quietly. "Then you will lose everything." Theron stepped forward, barely hiding his smile. "The Galactic Collective has given you a choice. Remove the human from your life or face sanctions that will cripple our economy. Even your own council stands against you." Vera looked around the room. Her admirals, her generals, her advisors, all of them were nodding. All of them wanted her to sacrifice Daniel for the Empire. "Leave me," she commanded. "All of you, now." They left, all except Theron, who lingered at the door. "You have until tomorrow morning to make your decision, Your Majesty," he said. "Choose wisely." That night, Daniel came to her chambers. "I heard about the ultimatum," he said softly. "Vera, you have to let me go." "No, I'm serious." Daniel's eyes were wet, but his voice was steady. "Your empire is falling apart because of me. Millions of people depend on you. I'm just one person, one useless, scared, ordinary person. You can't destroy everything you've built for someone like me." Vera stood and walked to him. She took his face in her hands. "You are not useless," she said. "You are the only real thing I have ever known. If I surrender you to save my throne, then my throne means nothing." "But, Daniel," her voice cracked. "For 300 years, I have been exactly what my empire needed me to be. Cold, perfect, alone. You showed me there is another way to live. I will not go back to that darkness, not even to save myself." Daniel had no words. He simply held her, and for a few hours they pretended the galaxy was not burning around them. At dawn, the coup began. Theron had been planning for months. While the Empress was distracted by her human, he had gathered supporters in the military. He had promised them a return to the old ways. He had promised them strength without weakness, power without love. When the Imperial fleet surrounded the embassy, Theron broadcast his message to the entire galaxy. "Empress Vera has been compromised by alien influence. For the good of the Empire, I am assuming command. The human Daniel Park will be executed as a corrupting agent. The Empress will be placed in protective custody until she recovers her sanity." Warriors stormed the embassy. Vera fought, but there were too many. They dragged her away in energy chains while she screamed Daniel's name. Daniel was not captured. He was hidden in a maintenance closet by Lisa, who had seen the attack coming. "Stay here," Lisa whispered. "Stay hidden. Stay safe." But Daniel could not stay safe. Not while Vera was in danger. For the first time in his life, Daniel did not want to hide. He wanted to fight. He found Ambassador Grace Kim organizing what remained of the embassy staff. Human soldiers, kitchen workers, engineers, anyone who had escaped the first wave of the attack. "We have to rescue her," Daniel said. Everyone stared at him. This was the same man who could barely speak above a whisper. The same man who apologized for existing. Now his eyes were burning with something none of them had seen before. "Private Park," Commander Webb said carefully. "The flagship is a fortress. We have no weapons, no armor, no ships. What exactly do you propose?" Daniel's mind was racing. All his life, his anxiety had made him imagine every possible disaster, every way things could go wrong. Now he used that same fear to imagine every way things could go right. "I know the security layouts," Daniel said. "I've been following the Empress for weeks. I know where the blind spots are, I know which systems are vulnerable, and I know something Theron doesn't." "What's that?" Grace Kim asked. "He thinks humans are weak and predictable. He's not even watching for us. To him, we're not a threat. That's exactly why we can beat him." It was the craziest plan anyone had ever heard. 40 humans against a warship full of Cathari warriors. The odds were impossible. They did it anyway. Daniel led the team through maintenance tunnels that the Cathari didn't even know existed. They disabled security systems with tricks that seemed like magic to the alien technology. They moved like shadows, like ghosts, like the clever insects that the aliens had always dismissed them as. When Daniel finally reached Vera's cell, Theron was waiting. "The little human," Theron laughed. "Come to die for your Empress? How touching, how pathetic." Theron was twice Daniel's size. He had centuries of combat training. He had weapons that could vaporize steel. Daniel had nothing but his shaking hands and his stubborn, stupid love. "I am terrified," Daniel admitted. His voice shook. His whole body shook. "I have been scared every single day of my life." Theron smiled. "Then kneel, little human. Kneel and beg for a quick death." "No." Daniel raised his fists. They trembled like leaves in a storm. "Being scared doesn't mean I stop fighting. It just means I fight scared." The battle was short and brutal. Daniel was not a warrior. He was beaten. He was thrown against walls. He was cut, burned, and broken. But every time he fell, he got back up. And while Theron was focused on killing this impossible human, he did not see Lisa approaching from behind with an energy weapon she had stolen from a fallen guard. One shot. Theron fell. Daniel collapsed against the cell door, bleeding from a dozen wounds, but he was smiling. "I got you," he whispered through the bars. "I got you." Behind the energy barrier, Vera was crying. The Empress of the Cathari Empire, who had not cried in 300 years, was weeping for a trembling human who refused to stop loving her. "You impossible man," she sobbed. "You impossible, beautiful, stubborn man." Daniel coughed up blood and grinned. "That's me. Too dumb to stay down." The coup was over. But for Daniel and Vera, everything was just beginning. The galaxy had never seen anything like it. Empress Vera stood before the Galactic Collective, not on a throne of power, but on a simple platform beside a human who still had bandages on his arms. "I have ruled for 300 years, Vera said to the assembled representatives of 100 species. "In that time I conquered worlds. I crushed rebellions. I built an empire that stretched across 200 star systems, and I believed that made me strong." She paused. The great hall was completely silent. "I was wrong." Gasps echoed through the chamber. The Empress of the Cathari, admitting weakness? Impossible. "True strength," Vera continued, "is not the ability to destroy. It is the courage to love when love makes you vulnerable. It is the choice to be kind when cruelty would be easier. A human taught me this. A human who shakes when he speaks too loud. A human who apologizes when he bumps into furniture. A human who threw himself in front of a weapon to save someone who had done nothing but insult his entire species. She turned to look at Daniel, who was turning bright red and trying to become invisible. "Humanity is not primitive," Vera declared. "They are what we have forgotten how to be. They are brave in their fear. They are strong in their gentleness. They are powerful in their love." The chamber exploded into argument. Some representatives were outraged. Others were thoughtful. A few were actually crying. But something had changed. A seed had been planted. Over the following months, that seed grew into something nobody expected. Earth's status in the Galactic Collective rose dramatically. Other species, tired of endless wars and cold politics, began to look at humanity differently. These small, soft creatures had toppled a coup with kitchen staff and maintenance workers. Their leader had defeated a legendary warrior by refusing to stay down. Maybe there was something to learn from them after all. Ambassadors from distant worlds started visiting Earth. They wanted to understand human art, human music, human love. They attended weddings and watched romantic comedies and read poetry about flowers. They cried at sad movies and laughed at silly jokes and slowly began to remember what it felt like to simply be alive. Humanity did not rise through conquest. They rose through something much more powerful. They rose by being themselves. 1 year after the coup, Daniel stood in the embassy garden where he and Vera had first watched the sunset together. His hands were shaking so badly that he could barely hold the small box in his pocket. Vera was sitting on their favorite bench, looking more beautiful than any Empress had a right to look. She was wearing a simple dress instead of her royal armor. Her silver hair was loose around her shoulders. She looked almost human. "You wanted to speak with me?" she asked, tilting her head curiously. Daniel had practiced this speech 100 times. He had written it down. He had memorized every word. And now, standing in front of her, he forgot everything. I wanted to ask. That is, I was hoping. If you would maybe consider—" He tripped over his own feet and fell to one knee. "Are you all right?" Vera stood up, concerned. "Actually, this is good. This is the right position." Daniel fumbled with the box in his pocket. His hands were shaking so much that the box flew out and landed in the grass. Vera stared at it. Then she stared at Daniel. "Is that—" "I love you," Daniel blurted out, the words tumbling over each other in their rush to escape. "I have loved you since the moment you scared me half to death in the plaza. I love your silver eyes and your cold jokes, and the way you pretend not to like human romance novels even though you've read 47 of them. I love how you're terrifying to everyone except me. I love that you chose me even when it cost you everything." He grabbed the box from the grass and opened it with trembling fingers. Inside was a simple ring, not diamonds or alien crystals, but a band of silver twisted with violet metal from Vera's homeworld. "I can't offer you an empire. I can barely offer you a stable conversation. But I can offer you my whole heart, forever, if you want it. Vera, will you—" "Yes." Daniel blinked. I didn't finish asking." "I know." "Yes." Vera was laughing, tears streaming down her violet cheeks. "Yes, yes, 1,000 times. Yes, you ridiculous, wonderful man. I do not need to hear the question. I have been waiting for you to ask since the day you tried to explain the plot of a book about a vampire who loves a baker." Daniel put the ring on her finger with hands that would not stop shaking. It did not matter. Nothing mattered except this moment, this woman, this impossible love that had changed everything. The wedding was broadcast across the entire galaxy. Billions of beings watched as the Empress of the Cathari married a human private first class from Ohio. Daniel's mother sat in the front row, healthy and crying and so proud she could barely breathe. The Cathari medical technology had cured her completely. Her son had saved the galaxy and found love, and she got to see it all. Daniel still looked like he might faint the entire ceremony. He still stammered during his vows. He still apologized when he stepped on Vera's dress. Vera had never been happier in her 300 years of life. 5 years later, Daniel and Vera stood on the observation deck of the Imperial flagship. Through the massive windows, they watched as a new human colony took its first steps on a distant world. Children were playing in fields of alien flowers. Families were building homes. A new chapter of human history was beginning. "Did you ever imagine this?" Vera asked softly. "You changing the galaxy?" Daniel laughed quietly and shook his head. "I was just doing my job, protecting people. That's all I ever wanted to do." "You did more than protect," Vera said. "You taught the galaxy that strength and softness can exist together. That love is not weakness. That being afraid does not mean being helpless." She took his hand. After all these years, his touch still made her feel like everything was possible. "My people have a saying," Vera continued. "The stars remember the bold, but I think they also remember the kind. They remember the ones who chose love over power. They remember the small, quiet heroes who changed everything just by being themselves." Daniel looked at the colony below, at the children playing under an alien sun, at the future he had helped create. "I'm still scared, you know," he admitted. "Every day. I don't think that ever goes away." Vera smiled and squeezed his hand. "Good. Because as you taught me, the brave ones are not those who feel no fear,